Summertime greetings to all of you. This is Bill Galic. I will be your instructor for the Introduction to Social Welfare, Social Work 106 for this summer semester. As you notice on the slide here, the intro slide, this is a 10-week presentation of what is typically a 15-week course, 15 weeks of instruction that is. And so, as you will probably be able to figure out pretty quickly, you're going to be doing the readings that you would typically do in 15 weeks, well, at about a time and a half pace. And so be ready to get your running shoes out and to keep up with me this semester. There have been a few modifications I've made to this course for the summer. I haven't removed any material or any lessons from the class, but have adjusted some of the expectations in terms of your paper and things like this because of the fact that, as is often the case over the summer semester, this is a smaller class. And so just some adjustments made to recognize and acknowledge that, but we'll get to that later in this presentation. If you have taken a course with me before, and I know several of you have, a lot of what you're going to hear in this presentation is very similar to what you heard when you took a previous course with me. However, I encourage you to follow along because there are variations in this class that you'll want to know about. And honestly, I have found that throughout the semester I'll often have questions presented to me that are answered in this initial presentation. And I realize this is not the most important thing going on in your life, and so you're not going to remember everything I say. But in any event, I think it's good for you to follow along, and even if you've had a course with me before and are familiar with some of the things that I'm telling the class as a whole here. So the reading, while it's going to be at a faster pace because of the shorter semester, you're going to find the readings to be very interesting. This course, I think, actually may be the first course that I taught for the University of Alaska system back in the late 1980s, I think it was, maybe early 90s. There was a small group of social work students at the Kenai Peninsula College branch of UAA who wanted to take some local courses, and so I was asked to teach the Intro to Social Welfare, and that's really how my part-time career, or I think it's now been something like, well, it's over 65 semesters. My part-time career as an adjunct instructor at KPC and eventually the UAA School of Social Work began with this course and has evolved over the time. I've taught this course probably a couple of dozen times by now, if not more often than that. And interestingly, two of the three books that you're going to be working out of this semester are ones that were in the first presentation of the course as well. Newer editions, of course, but at least one of them, the textbook, is a newer edition. But actually, the text is one that I left 4 or 5 semesters of after teaching this course 4 or 5 semesters. I left that text, went to another one, and then after a couple semesters switched back again because I just haven't found a better social welfare text than this one. Now, interestingly, the author is aging, and her co-author I've written to, and I haven't gotten a word back yet as to whether they're going to be doing a new edition of this book anytime in the future, and so I may wind up having to find another text eventually, but it's current enough that it's still very useful. Again, more about that in a few more slides. The readings, of course, and the authors have a particular kind of leaning that really brings in politics, and so one aspect of this course is going to be you're needing to kind of stay in touch with what's going on in the news and in the media and things like this, and tying it into course concepts. If you don't already know, you'll learn my political leanings pretty quickly. And being a lifelong social worker, you can pretty well guess that I lean to the left in the political realm. And that's not to say there isn't room for those who lean to the right in this course either. I think a good mixture of ideas is the kind of thing that makes a class like this ever more interesting. And so even if your views don't agree with mine, please do speak up in discussion boards and journals and make your own thoughts known as well, because it's in this mix of the discussion between the various political viewpoints and social viewpoints that we make progress. One of the problems with the current political atmosphere, and those of you who are a little older in class will know that this politics hasn't always been as intensely partisan as it is right now. And in fact, it's become almost corrosive in nature. The discussion is not a discussion anymore. It's an argument, and it's become a pretty toxic kind of topic, politics, and it wasn't too long ago when the left and the right, the Republicans and Democrats, conservatives and liberals, however you want to view them, they could sit down together around a table and talk about their differences of opinion, give and take a little bit and compromise. And in Congress, at least, things could get done and we could make some social progress. With the current state of things, the left and the right each kind of stomp their feet and say, this is what I want, and I'm not willing to give this up, and I'm not willing to compromise. And so consequently, well, as has been said, I think by some politics, the center can't necessarily hold in a situation like that, and so no progress is made. And so, in any event, what I'm saying is that I think that a healthy discussion of these issues is something that can make the class very, very useful for you, and also perhaps inform you so that when the topic comes up in your own life, you'll be really pretty well informed about how to address issues such as this. So anyway, a little bit about myself here, and I know most of you have been in class with me before, so I'll try to keep this short and not bore you too much. You see here, first of all, my email addresses. The first one is the university email address, and that is the one the university prefers us to communicate through. The second address is my Comcast.net address, and I will tell you that's the one that's probably going to get my attention the most quickly. I will be checking my university email at least every other day. That's my intention, is to check it every other day at a minimum. But my Comcast address it's on all my devices, and so I'm seeing emails pretty quickly on that. No one else reads my email, so you can write to me at home. You can leave messages on my phone if you want, both my landline there, which is the number on the right, and in my cell. So you can leave messages or send me texts at the cell or whatever you want to do, and just know that there isn't anybody else that's going to be picking up and reading it. The only living being that I'm sharing my living quarters with at the present time is my 2-year-old husky, and he has not yet learned how to read. And so you don't have to worry about him, listening in or figuring out what you're saying to me. So as for myself, I'm teaching this class. Well, I retired from full-time social work in 2014. At the time, I was living in Alaska, and have a year or so later moved down to Northeast Indiana, where I'm residing now. Happily, the university has allowed me to continue teaching for them, and this is something that I really consider to be quite a privilege, and something that I look forward to every semester is a new group of students. I just think it's a part of my own professional obligation to provide what education I can for people who are coming into the field. In fact, it is a professional obligation in our code of ethics, and so this really gives me an opportunity to fulfill my my professional aspirations, even though I'm retired from full-time work. I got a bachelor's in social work from Michigan State in 1974, and master's in social work, MSW, from Florida State University in 1983. My work experience includes a year or two in public assistance and food stamp certification programs in Central Florida, 4 years in child protection there, another 8 years in a large residential facility for children and adolescents who were removed from their families because of abuse or neglect, or who were exhibiting behavioral problems that were beyond their parents' control. In 1987, late 86, early 1987, I moved to Kenai, Alaska, where I began to work as an outpatient mental health therapist in at the time it was Central Peninsula Mental Health Center. Now I believe it's I don't remember the name, the PCHS, Peninsula Community Health Services, I think it is, and it's gone through 3 or 4 iterations since then. And most of my work while working at the mental health center was working with children and families, many of whom were involved in the child welfare system. And then in 1995, I was hired by the state of Alaska to supervise child protection activities, really initially all those activities all over the peninsula. Eventually, after several years, and the job was divided into half and then half again because of the increasing caseload, I wound up focusing upon supervising what are now called initial assessments, what were then called intake investigations in child protection, so that when a new report was filed with the agency, my responsibility with the OCS was to manage and supervise the workers who were going out and conducting those investigations. And that's where I retired after, almost 20 years in that particular position. I started teaching for the I did get the opportunity to teach one class for the University of Central Florida School of Social Work before I left Orlando, and since being in Kenai, I have taught there really pretty much continuously, like I said, 65 plus semesters since the late 1980s in social work, human services, and sociology classes. Okay, so and along the way, I've adopted 3 boys. Each individual, one at a time. So I raised 3 kids as a single dad, mostly through their teenage years. They're all grown and out on their own, functioning pretty successfully, in fact. And then also hosted 9 adolescents from Europe and China over the years as a host parent with the Youth for Understanding foreign exchange program, and also volunteered with YFU to provide agency contact for other students who were placed with other families in the area. That was called an area representative. So through that, I was exposed to young men and women from all over the world. It was really such a great experience, and I would highly recommend it to you. So that's so much about me anyway. So the rest of you who have heard all this before, you can wake up now, and we're going to move on. So first of all, we'll take a look at our textbooks. This is the cover of the 7th edition of the New History of Social Welfare by Phyllis Day and Jerome Scheel. This is the book you should have or should be working out of. It is, as far as I know, the most recent edition. The final chapter is in about the middle of the Obama administration, I believe the beginning of the second administration. So we don't have anything about the current administration in this text. I will try to add some information late in the semester about that, and also just, of course, we'll be touching on the current events in the current Trump administration as well throughout the course of the semester. So I'm not too worried that we don't have a President Trump chapter in this book at this present time. Phyllis Day was the original author, and you will find out pretty quickly she is a feminist author, and I've had both men and women who react positively and react negatively to some of the things that she says, the approach she takes. I have come to learn, the more and more and more I've gone over this material over the years, that what she's saying is it right on the money, and in some respects I think she has contributed to my own development of my thought about feminism over the years. She's a very well informed individual and has the right kind of attitude for a social work course, and so I think you'll find this book to be challenging to you. Sometimes might stir you up some, but that's the kind of books I like to find for my classes. You know, if as we are exposed to material about issues such as we're going to cover in this class, and we don't get any information that stirs us up, or that maybe, you know, we vigorously agree with or we vigorously disagree with, if none of that's going on in us, we're probably not really learning much. I think in order to learn, and our own view of the world has to be shaken up, and this is one way to do this, is to read material that may challenge your thinking and may challenge your own sense of values as well. And so, particularly in the early chapters of this book, as we talk about American values, be ready to kind of take a look at those American values and compare them to the kinds of things that are going on in your own life. I mean, what you believe as well, and you can begin to see how this is a very personal topic as well as a professional topic. So the course is designed really around the layout of this book. This is a historical presentation of social welfare programs that goes way, way, way back, and we'll go through the first 1900 or 1800 years of well, even more than that, of human history in just a couple of weeks. It's going to be pretty superficial. And once we arrive on the shores of the colonies in the 1600s, we're going to begin to slow down a bit and look more closely at how social welfare has developed over the years in the United States. And you're going to find it's very interesting. This dovetails very well, by the way, with my own personal interest. When I started out at Michigan State, I was a history education major, and it was my intent to teach history. And long story, I got kind of pulled into the social work classes in my freshman year, and got into a volunteer program and switched my major before the year was out. But I really love history. I do a lot of reading on history, biographies, and things like this. And so you'll find that my interest in history comes out as we go through this course. So I hope you'll bear with me on that. I just think there's some interesting kinds of things to think about as we work through this material. The other book is called So You Think I Drive a Cadillac, and it's written by a woman by the name of Karen Seacom. Now, this is the book that's going to give you, instead of the historical progression of the development of social welfare policy and programming in the United States, this is the book that's going to kind of introduce you to what it's like to be somebody living on social welfare, and will help you help us, not only look at the lives of the individuals and try to understand how it is that they do the things they do and the things they don't do, but we'll also take a look at our system as it compares to other systems around the world, particularly with Europe. And by the end of the book, you're going to start to see how our system really fails the needy so desperately in this nation. And that it doesn't have to. It doesn't in other parts of the world. And so I think you'll find this book to be, again, very, very interesting, very challenging to you, and may help you understand a little bit about the debate that goes on between the right and the left as far as the existence of social programs and things like this. Whenever they start talking about the budget, particularly with the current Congress, our conservatives are always looking to, cut back on what they call entitlement programs, and so nowadays they're talking about the food stamp program, or SNAP, and the TANF, the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, what used to be called AFDC. In Alaska, it's called ATAP. Those programs, the traditional food stamp and welfare programs, are always being criticized by the right, and we're always going to get those people off of those programs and get them to work and all of these kinds of things. And well, as we'll look early in the semester, we're going to look at why it is that getting them off of welfare and into jobs isn't an easy thing to do. Not because they don't want to, but because there aren't jobs there, and there's a reason why there aren't jobs there. We'll be talking about that more than once during the semester. Let's start out with the fact that, in order for, if you take in basic economics, in order for our capitalist system to function properly, there has to be a certain percentage of unemployed. In order, what that does is it keeps the wages down, because if there are people that are out there that want my job, I can't really demand a wage increase from my boss unless he wants to give it to me, or she wants to give it to me, because he or she can just go out and hire the next person that's waiting for the job, who will probably work for it at a less pay than me because they're desperate, right? So the unemployed, that layer of unemployed employees keeps wages down. It helps businesses. And if there are no unemployed, wages will go up by the same kind of rationale. And that we've heard over and over and over again. And so when they talk about full employment in America, we're talking about 4 or 5% unemployment, not 0% unemployment, not everybody working that wants to work. And mind you, the unemployment rate only involves people who are looking for work. It doesn't involve people that aren't looking for work. And so if we have a 5% unemployment rate, which is generally considered ideal from the economic standpoint, that means 1 in 20 people who are actively seeking employment can't get a job. 1 in 20. Okay, and so there aren't enough jobs out there. It's interesting because in the spring of 2018, the Democrats have been proposing a guaranteed job plan, and it's very interesting. What they're essentially proposing is that the federal government, as they did during the days of the New Deal after the Depression, that the federal government create jobs for people so that everybody who wants to work can work. And they're claiming that in the long run, although that's going to mean a lot higher taxes in some respects, it's going to save us tax money in terms of lower welfare payments, lower Medicaid payments, lower unemployment payments, and that kind of thing. And so they think that it will be good for everybody, and even a lot of conservatives are in favor of this Democrat plan, for full employment, because they think that the people who are receiving welfare are just lazy, and that's why they're getting welfare. And so it's just an interesting kind of a thing. One conservative publication, nationalreview.com, said that the recipe for a jobs guarantee is a socialist disaster. Guaranteed jobs would devastate small businesses, which would have to compete for workers with a government that can offer wages and benefits, quote, wholly untethered from the real cost of labor. It's an interesting kind of thing. In other words, right there, it is indicating that the competition for workers, that the unemployed, keeps wages down. So that's good for business. All right. So the Washington Post, which is really a much more left-leaning publication, WashingtonPost.com, says, what would all these people do? Franklin D. Roosevelt's Works Progress Administration was effective in its era, this publication says, but today roads, bridges, and buildings aren't built by armies of men wielding shovels. They're built by complex machinery that you have to have extensive training to operate. So this publication goes on to say that while the government could put some people to work as home health care aides, painters, clerks, quote, it probably cannot use 25 million of them. Most of the people in this program would be doing expensive make work. So what does this tell us? Both the left and the right are saying we have to have some unemployment. So if that's the case, why are we so hard on people who are receiving unemployment benefits and public assistance and food stamps? I mean, if we have to have people out of work for our system to work right, that's for us and for the wealthy, then why do we have to stigmatize people who are really supporting this system? So anyway, this is some of the stuff you might be looking at in the Second book, and certainly we'll be talking about during the course of the semester. Finally, the third book is one that you may have read in high school or in another class, even in university, and it's a book that's over 100 years old, as you can see. You'll find some copies. I think they've been printed since then. But really, this is a little paperback that you can probably go to a used bookstore and find for 25 cents. In fact, I know you can also download it online for free. I think it's kind of the part of the public domain now. It's so old. The Jungle was written by Upton Sinclair, and if I were going to compare Upton Sinclair to a person in modern society, it would be Michael Moore. Now, Michael Moore stirs up a lot of people. Michael Moore really irritates people with his premises, but what he does in his films, and we'll be looking at one of his films later in the semester. What he does is that he takes American institutions and shows us what it is about those institutions that hurt people, and that's really his common theme, his common thread through, I think, pretty much all of his movies. And so this is what Sinclair did with The Jungle. If you remember from American history, you studied about the muckrakers in the early 1900s. These were the ones that were writing books that were exposing all the ills in American society at the time. And this is one of those books, perhaps one of the most famous and important books from that era. Now, it will be read at the time that we're studying that particular period in our social welfare history. It's called the progressive era, and so it will blend in well with what you're reading in your textbooks. But what you're going to do with the jungle, you're going to read this book, and you're going to do a paper 3 to 4 pages long, not a big paper, that will be kind of a book review, and we'll also tie it into course concepts. More on that later. But if you're looking for something to do to get busy right away, start reading this book. I don't know, it's a couple hundred, maybe 300 pages long. I don't remember anymore, but it's a small dime store paperback or an easy download. Get the unabridged version of the book. If you have a download, don't get the abridged version. Get the unabridged version. And the first 100 pages or so are pretty dense. And so just bear with it and follow the story, and you'll see the point. By the way, Upton Sinclair was a socialist, and at the time that this book was published, socialism was a big political movement all around the world. 11 years later, the Bolsheviks would overthrow the Tsar in Russia, and really socialism had a lot of influence in the early 1900s and still does throughout all the countries in Europe. It's one of the reasons why they have better social welfare programs than we have over here across the pond. And at that time, that ocean probably is the thing that one of the things that more or less kept us from having more of a socialist influence in our own politics. But there was a period in the 100 years ago or so where the Socialist Party was really getting some traction in elections, and I believe even elected a governor or a U.S. senator, I don't remember which, in Wisconsin, that kind of thing. And so this book, historically speaking, really is about an era that was very, very important. A lot of people were very afraid of socialism, and it was all about the European immigrants coming over. Everybody was afraid the immigrants were bringing, were going to change our culture, because they were Catholics and they were socialists, and they looked a little different from us and in America and all that kind of. My father and grandparents being among those immigrants, by the way. Not at all unlike what we're hearing today about the Latinos coming north of the border and about the Muslims coming from Europe, and all the reluctance to accept that those groups of immigrants wholly into our society. History repeats itself over and over again. So anyway, good book, and get reading on it. I think your paper is going to be due at the end of week 4. So you have the syllabus. If you haven't already found it, it's in the class, and please do print it and keep a hard copy on hand for you. If it is subject to change, in that if something comes up that I've got to correct something, I will do that. I will notify you if that's happening, and so that it won't be changed, without you knowing about it. But this is pretty much what you can expect throughout the semester. Please do read through it and let me know if you have questions. Again, please download the syllabus from the link available in the course and keep a hard copy handy. Now, the syllabus will tell you this is how you get your points. There are 640 points total during the semester. We're going to go through each of these items here in the next few slides. There's also going to be bonus points where you can do a few extra small exercises really they're just extra discussion boards during the semester to give you 30 extra points if you participate fully. Now, one thing I want to tell you, Blackboard, I have to give a column in your grade center for each activity, and that includes the 3 extra discussion boards. I suppose one way I could do this is to combine the 2 discussion boards into one column, and during the weeks that that we have those extra credit activities, but I don't do that. And so each of the 2 discussion boards that week, and you can pick either one of those 2 discussion boards to respond to if you only want to do one. Each of the 2 discussion boards that week will have a column, and so if you choose not to do the extra credit one, you're going to see a 0 in that column for points, and that just means you got no points for that particular activity. It does not mean you got an F. Blackboard doesn't understand that. Blackboard's going to tell you those extra credit points. There's 30 points that you should be getting that you're not getting. Just don't worry about what Blackboard tells you in that regard. I'm going to look at the point total at the end of the semester, and I'm going to give you your grade based upon the total number of points you earned. All right, so I always get questions about that, particularly at the end of the semester when everybody suddenly starts looking to see what their grade's going to be, and I'll be telling you, I told you this in the opening lecture, but that's the way it is here. Okay, so here's how you get your points. It's pretty simple. This is in the syllabus also. 90%, 80%, etc., etc. The extra credit points are not included in here, so really technically you can get 670 points. 50 of those points are earned by participation and attendance, and Blackboard tells me when you check in, so I can kind of track your involvement in that respect if I want to do that. But really what I'm going to be looking at is have you participated in all the activities, and have you done so fully? Have you been engaged in the discussions, or are you just kind of like making comments to earn some points, that kind of thing. So this is how you're going to earn your participation and attendance. This is subjective on my part. I just have to kind of take an overview of everything, and if you do everything and you participate in all the activities you're supposed to, you can pretty much figure you're going to get 50 points there. The discussion boards, every week you're going to have one discussion board. In 3 of the 10 weeks there are 2. Those are the extra credit boards. So after you have read the assignments, after you have listened to the lectures, then the next slide in your Blackboard course, the learning unit, is going to be your discussion boards. And you click on that, and you'll go to the question in the discussion board, and you're to respond to the question or the prompt, if you want to call it that. A minimum of 150 words for your original response, and you're to do that within a week after the course opens, or the learning unit opens. Each learning unit each week opens on Sunday morning, and so by the following Sunday night you should have your original 150 words plus response to the discussion board question. Then within the next 4 days between then and the following Thursday, that is now like 10 days after that learning unit opened, or 11 days after that learning unit opened, you should have gone back in and read at least 2 of your classmates' posts and responded to those posts. Your response do not have to be 150 words, but they should be meaningful. Not just, yeah, I agree, no, I don't agree, that's a crock, oh, that's wonderful, I love your comment, whatever. But if you agree, talk a little bit about why you agree, or if you don't, why not? Or if you have some other thoughts about it, express those thoughts. Make it a meaningful post, and in order to get full credit. This is how it will go. Your assignments for a discussion board opens on a Sunday. By the following Sunday night, you should have your original response in there. By the Thursday after that, you should have responded to 2 classmates' posts. You can respond to more if you want. And then generally, I will grade the following weekend. So the grade for your discussion board posts are going to appear in the grade center maybe 2 weeks after those boards have opened. If you do everything according to Hoyle there, you get 10 points for that altogether. And remember, this is a public post, and so everybody in the class is going to read what you write, including myself, of course. Now, by the way, the discussion boards I consider to be a conversation between you and your classmates. I do read your discussion board posts, and I will respond occasionally to things that are said in there, but this is not where I do most of my commenting on your stuff. I will say some things from time to time, but this is really between you and your classmates, so don't expect to see me commenting all the time in discussion boards, and just FYI. Now, where you're going to get a comment from me, at least assuming that I'm keeping up okay, is in your journal entry, and you will find this, I think, in the panel or slide in your Blackboard course after the discussion boards. So, by the way, when you click on the discussion board and you go to the discussion board and you make your posts, you have to use your browser back button to get back into the class. There's no way to click the little arrow on the upper right hand side to go to the next slide. You have to go back into the class by using your browser back button. Then I think you click on the little right arrow at the top of your page, and that'll take you to what's called your weekly e-scrapbook journal. And if you click on that, underline underscore thing. Please read the instructions first. Click on that underline thing, and that will take you to a spot where you can post your journal. Now, your journal is your take on what's going on in the world around you. This look at newspapers, magazines, media, television, whatever it is, some sort of thing about a current event that's going on that's related to social welfare or civil rights. Now, try to keep it focused on these topics, because these are the topics that our class is going to cover. Human rights, oppression, minorities, diversity topics, social welfare topics, and really, when your legislature is working and talking about the budget, education funding and funding for food stamps and funding for public welfare programs, and our attitudes about unemployment compensation, all those kinds of things, you can't, you trip over all of these topics in the current discussion. So please, it's so easy to find a topic related to our class. So please do keep it focused on that. So then you're going to find that topic, and in your journal you will take your first. And there's a there's a good example of a good journal entry. A couple places I'll point to here in a moment, but you do a brief summary. You cite your source and tell me where it comes from. You do a brief summary, just telling me what it is in that particular article, and then a separate paragraph of about 150 words or more giving me your reaction to that. So there you have it. That's, again, for that you get 10 points, and that is to be completed by the Sunday evening after the learning unit opens. So by the time you have, when you're making your original post a week later after you read the discussion board, be making your journal post by then too. This should be kept current because it is supposed to be current events, and the idea here is to help you see how this topic is alive every day all around you. And please type your post directly into the journal tool. You cannot edit in that tool, I'm sorry, but that's the fact. But what you can do is type your post up in Word, okay, and then copy it in Word and paste it into the journal tool. Do not paste it in as an attachment. Don't copy it and put it in as an attachment, please. So 10 points a week for your journal. There's a thorough description of how your post can earn points in this week's learning unit in a section titled How Your Posts Will Earn Points. It's very thorough. And then that pretty much is the same thing. It's in a course menu item under board and journal grading guidelines. And again, in both of those spots, there's a very good example of how I would like the journals to be done. So please be sure to look at that. This is one of those modifications I'm making on this paper, and I'm actually thinking about leaving this permanently, but this paper has in the past been 3 to 6 pages long, and I've turned this into a 3 to 4 page paper, at least for the summer, because again, I recognize you're working at a faster pace. But your paper, about 1,000 to 1,200 words, a full credit paper is, and this is a 50-point project, will give a brief summary of the book, in your own words, okay? Don't lift something from somewhere else, but in your own words, a brief summary of the book, what your reaction is to the material, to the book, the story, whatever that might be, and tie course concepts into all of that. Things that you've learned in the class you can kind of refer to in the paper. This, unlike your journal entry, this I do want you to attach as a Word attachment. You access this project through your assignments link in the course menu. It's not there yet, but it will be shortly. And attach your paper as a Word document in this. Do not type this into the tool. So this is the one time I do want you to put it in. And also, please make it a Word attachment. Sometimes I get papers submitted as PDFs, and there are issues with that for me in terms of how I can work with that paper when I get it. And so I really prefer to have your assignments given to me as either a Pages document or a Word document, something that I can comment on if I want more easily. Now the big thing in the semester, and this is another one of those modifications, and I know there's a handful of you out there that are groaning, oh, another group project, because when you work with a group, there's always people who are slackers. When you work with a group online, it's harder to get the slackers by the arm and get them engaged. I understand that, um, but I will tell you, in social work, and the syllabus says this, and you've heard this before from me. In social work, we work in groups. We always have people in groups who are just not really good contributors, and we still have to function as a group, and we have to get our job done. And so engage that person. Now, I do say, if you kind of are, halfway towards completion of that project or whatever, and the other person isn't responding to you at all, do let me know, and I'll make a contact with that person and find out what they're doing. Um, don't wait to the last minute if that's happening, but do try to engage that person yourself first, so that you're prepared to tell me what you've done. And the paper says, in fact, you're supposed to the syllabus says, send me an email and copy the person, everybody in your group. Okay, so now in this particular class, because it's a small group of students, your group's going to be probably, well, at the maximum, you'll have 3 people, probably just you and another person. And so, what is typically the work typically divided up between 4 or 5 people in my regular fuller classes, we're dividing up between 2, possibly 3 students. And so I've shortened the requirement for the paper to 4,000 words instead of 5,000, from 15 pages to 12 pages. So you're each going to be assigned, and in this particular class, I'm going to give you a topic, and let's just say, and I don't think we do this, but let's say abortion. Should abortion be legal in the United States? And maybe this is going to be one of the projects, I don't know yet. One of you will be assigned to research the yes, it should be legal, and one of you will be assigned to research the no, it should not be legal. And when you're done, typically you have 2 students researching each side in the larger classes, right? But here's going to be one of you each. The third person will be assigned to one of those two positions, and so in that one group, one of the 2 people in the class is going to have somebody working with them. They'll be lucky, but you will then research this. Now, the idea of this paper is not to persuade the reader. This is not a persuasive project. This is you gather the information out there that the yes or the no side uses to justify their response, and you put it all together in one paper. So yes and no are going to be in the paper. They're going to be clearly identified, yes and no, and it's going to be a objective, not an opinion based, not a I'm trying to convince you, but here are what the facts are, or here are what everybody thinks kind of a paper. More on that, you'll be reading more about that when the project's assigned. Again, I'll go through all that with you. So this will be due. I think I have a date, something like the 12th of April, I believe. Maybe it's a little earlier than that. It's in the syllabus. That's the date I'm going to try to make for the paper. So to have it due. So once your paper is done, I do say don't procrastinate. Once your paper is done, I'm going to submit it to a discussion board forum. It's called a peer review forum, where everybody else in the class is going to read your paper, and you're going to read everybody else's paper, and you participate in a discussion board on that particular topic. You'll earn 50 points for that discussion board. Actually, 50 points. Now, going back a slide, the other thing is, in order to kind of guard against the total slacker, to encourage everybody to make contact early and consistently, I have group check-ins, and so you'll get 20 points at 2 different times. If I can go into your group site in Blackboard course, and you'll have a site right there in Blackboard for you and your group to work in, private just to you and for you and me, with some tools to work together with. I'll be able to go in there and see that you're both or all three of you are participating in that project, and you will get 20 points. If I don't see anything to indicate that you're working there, you won't get any points that time around. Now, I do know that a lot of people like to work like Google Docs and different kinds of places. You might want to get together and meet over coffee. Maybe you want to communicate via email. You do all that stuff. It's great. I encourage it. But in order for to be graded on the check-ins, I need you submitting your stuff in your group worksite. That may mean commenting in your group's discussion board. You'll have your own discussion board. It may mean seeing something from you in the file exchange where you put in information that you have researched or things that you've written up or whatever. I just need to see your footprint in your group worksite twice, and I'll give you the dates when you're supposed to check in by when I assign the groups. The groups will be assigned probably week 3, I'm guessing. Okay. So altogether, your group project's 150 points. The check-ins are worth 40 points, and the peer forum is going to be another 50 points. And so you've got 50, 90, 240 points out of the 640 points. 640 points for the semester revolve around this project. So you see that group project's the big thing, right? 2 tests. Multiple choice questions. You'll take it right in Blackboard. You don't have to go anywhere. It doesn't have to be proctored. You can use your book if you want, but they're timed, and so you have only a certain amount of time to get the test done. If you haven't done it by that time, the test closes and you're out of luck for the rest of the points. If you don't like, and I didn't even say this here, I should add this. If you don't like your first score, you'll be able to go back in and take the test a second time, and the higher of your 2 scores will be the one that's recorded. Maybe I say that in another slide. No, I don't. Well, anyway, so anyway, they're worth 100 points altogether. And the second test is a cumulative test that covers the whole semester, so just FYI. Oh. Those of you that had this class with me before, or classes with me before, know this, but for those that haven't, the test opens week 5 and week 10. And on Thursday of each of those weeks is when the test opens. It'll be right there in your Blackboard course for the week. You take the test in Blackboard. You can take it again in Blackboard, But if you don't, you have 11 days to take the test. And so it opens on Thursday of week 5 or week 10. It'll stay open for the remainder of that week, plus through the entire next learning unit. So it'll be open for 11 days. And then it closes like the second Sunday night. And so you have 11 days to take the test. So therefore, no makeups. Okay. Don't miss the closing date, because if you do, you're just not going to be able to take the test. Bonus points, I've said this ad nauseum already. There will be 3 additional discussion boards, and you can respond to either or both of the discussion boards. Blackboard won't understand extra credit points, but this gives you up to 30 extra points. Now the course opens to announcements when you open up in Blackboard. When I put in an announcement, I also have Blackboard send you an email of that announcement. And so, if you're not seeing these things in your email, then you need to call IT because there's something wrong with your email account. But otherwise, you'll get an email about it. But when you open Blackboard, please look to see if there's a new announcement first, because this is kind of like me standing up in front of the class saying, before we get started tonight, I have something very important to tell you. So you want to make sure you read the announcements. I think the most important link in the course is the weekly course content link. And so when you click on weekly course content, each Sunday morning a new learning unit will open up in that area. And so you click on that learning unit and work through those slides. It gives you all your assignments and everything you need to have in order to do this. So don't miss. Be sure you read every slide. And just so that you know a little bit about what you should be expecting, the list here, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8 different issues or 8 different panels that are really going to be the minimum of what you're going to find. And you'll find these every week. Occasionally there's going to be some other links in there like tests, the course evaluation, perhaps, things like I have a few odds and ends that I put in there every now and little videos and things, but this is the core. This is sort of the skeleton of the course. This is what you're going to see every week, and so be sure you see all these panes. The introductory pane and the closing pane, I write. And I do hope you'll read them, because I put a lot of thought into those as I write them, and I modify them and I reword them so that they make better sense. This is a little bit of my editorializing. The introductory pane is really me trying to get you to be thinking about certain things as you work through materials for that week. The closing pane at the end is me kind of saying, okay, so to summarize everything, and this is what I want you to leave this learning unit with thinking about. Those are the two things that they really are. I think they're useful and worth reading, so please do read them. Otherwise, you're going to find the week's learning objectives that tie into the learning objectives in your syllabus each week. The week's assignments will be there for you. After the assignments, you'll find lectures, from 1 to 5 lectures, probably 2 at least minimum in this semester. Many of them are pretty short, 15-20 minutes long. Rather than doing one long lecture of a couple hours, they've encouraged us to break these lectures up so that it's just a little easier for you to absorb them one by one. So when you see more lectures, usually speaking, you're going to have shorter lectures. Now, one thing that I do want to mention to you or point out to you, if you were taking this course with me, face to face in a classroom, we would be sending, if we did it one evening, I think my classes used to be 7 to 9:45 once a week, and my night classes, and so 2 3/4 hours in the classroom. Generally, I would give you a 15-minute break. So figure 2.5 hours of delivery of discussion or lectures and things like that. And so when you think about, oh my gosh, this lecture is an hour long, remember, this is what you would be getting if you were sitting in class with me. And so really, if you total up all the lecture times, and I have each of those lecture panels tell you how long the lecture is going to be, so you can kind of plan for it when you open it, how long it's going to take. If you add all them up, you're going to find, I don't think there's any week where we go over 2 3/4 hours. Maybe once. I don't think so. Your discussion boards, yes. Your journals, yes. Your readings, yes. That's called homework. And the discussion boards, maybe that's really the kind of discussion you'll be having in the classroom if you're having intelligent discussions about the topics. And so maybe that's considered class time too. But in any event, I think you're going to find out that the contact time you have with me and with each other in this class is going to be about equal to the contact time you would have in a classroom. You might even get a little bit more time from me, but anyway, just about the length of lectures, just so you know. I'm sensitive to the fact that nobody wants to sit and listen to me drone on and on and on like maybe I'm doing right now, and so I try to be concise. You have your discussion board link after the lectures. You have your scrapbook, your journal link after that. Then I will give you copies of PDF copies of my slides from the PowerPoint presentation. You can download if you want, save them or throw them out, throw darts at them. I don't know. Sometimes they're good for studying. And then the closing pane. And again, you're going to find, for instance, the 2 tests will be right there in weekly course content, and you'll know when it's there. This almost seems like it's not important to talk about anymore, because I think everybody understands a lot more about communication over the internet than maybe we did when we started teaching these classes 10-15 years ago. I don't know, whatever it was. But when the old thing, all caps means you're yelling, that kind of thing. This has sort of become accepted, and so it may seem like a little thing, but be aware of this, and please, be considerate of the other person. There's a real live human being on the other end. It's not somebody it's not just a bunch of words on the other end. Somebody is really digesting these things, and what you type, what you say, what you write gets incorporated inside of them. And they feel it just like you were saying it to them. The only difference is they can't read your body language, they can't hear your tone of voice, they can't see your eyes, and so it is almost entirely the words that they're going to be responding to. None of that other nonverbal stuff is going on, and so just be aware that sometimes it's easier to misunderstand what people, or for other people to misunderstand what you're writing, because all those other things, just aren't there that we usually use to understand. So sarcasm, really doesn't come across as sarcasm sometimes. For instance, if you're joking around, it doesn't always seem like you're joking around to others. So just keep it in mind. Never threaten other people. I'm a required reporter, I guess, under the Title IX requirements, so that if there's any kind of sexual harassment, sexual intimidation, those kinds of things that goes on in any of the comments, I'm required to report that to the authorities in the campus, and I would do the same with any kind of verbal threats. Now, I don't think we have to worry about that here, but just understand, if you disagree with individuals, well, you're disagreeing with their opinion, not with the person. So, and then finally, if somebody does make a mistake, try to be forgiving of them if at all possible. So your first discussion board, write a post of about 150 words, and this is sort of the icebreaker exercise. What do you like? What's your major? Where you're from? Where you're going? What you want to do with your career? What's your primary interest in social work? What issues really get you engaged? Really, anything you want to share with us about who you are. What we're trying to do here is just to kind of introduce ourselves to each other, and so that we know that who that live person is at the other end. Many of you have been in class together before, and so try to share some things with us that maybe we don't know yet. Okay, and I always say, and not only for the introductory, but at any time during the course of the semester in your posts, photographs really kind of personalize things, and sometimes just kind of add life to your posts. So feel free to add pictures, but again, only things you're comfortable with, and it's not required, but photos are always nice and kind of make you into more of a human being rather than somebody typing at the other end of the internet. Don Young said that series of tubes. You're also going to make your first e-scrapbook entry, your first journal entry, so start looking, listening, and by the end of the week have your first journal post there too. And here's some ideas in terms of the kinds of things you might want to look for in the news, about social programming and budget, education, civil rights, racism, sexism, healthcare reform, immigration, same-sex marriage, gay rights. Immigration's a big one, big topic today, for instance. Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un, maybe not so much related to this class. For next week, I think you're going to be reading the first 3 chapters in the day text, and so in particular, there are a few different things that are important, in that textbook. I mean, in terms of like the residual perspective versus the institutional perspective. These are things in chapter 1 and 2. So do pay attention to those topics and try to grasp what she's saying. Of particular note, there are 9 American values. I think it's in chapter 1. Get familiar with those values. And remember, these are the things that she says, because you're American, you believe, and I believe. Now, intellectually, we may disagree with some of those values. We may see other viewpoints, other sides to that. But Day believes, because we're American, deep inside our fabric, we believe these things, even if we may intellectually disagree or take exception to them. And so we're talking about what's going on in our gut, And it's just something to think about. And what she says is, while those values are well, they're valued, they're honored in our culture. Those values also have a sharp edge to them that that are harmful to our clients. And so try to think about how that might be also as you get familiar with those values. These values are going to come up over and over and over again during the course of the semester, so try to get familiar with them and keep thinking about them. Okay, so that's it. And I babbled on a little longer than I should have. Try to be better at that in the future. But in any event, that's if you have any questions about this material at any time, please do contact me. You have my phone numbers. You can text me. You can email me. Whatever you want to do. So even though by the way, I have Apple products, so it's easy for me to FaceTime people. I don't know if I've downloaded Skype, but I can download Skype if you want to Skype. Also, Blackboard has a tool called Collaborate, where we can also connect through Blackboard class and through the Blackboard platform rather. So, any way, Facebook, video, whatever way you want to do it, I'm game if you want to have a face-to-face conversation with me as well. So, all that said, welcome to the class. We'll have a good experience together. There are 10 weeks of lessons, 1 week of break, so 11 weeks altogether in the course presentation. So I think we'll have a good time together. I'll be talking to you later. Bye.